I just finished creating these theaters, and if you want to download them, I'll link the download links below. The free version comes with a big theater, and the full version comes with a smaller theater with some more props, and it comes with like a little hallway that connects both the theaters. I sped up the footage and I cut a lot out, but hopefully I give you a good idea on how I went about modeling this project. There really isn't a lot going on with theaters. It's basically just walls and chairs for people to sit in. So I started modeling with the chair, and I figured if I make the chair, I can duplicate it, make my rows, and then that's like the majority of the work. It's the item that ends up defining the space. It's the most detailed item in the environment I think that I modeled. I figured if I have that, duplicate it out, and I basically have most of the work done. The way I approach modeling this chair is how I model and texture most items. I create a high detailed version of it. Most of my couches and chair props are made using the sculpt cloth simulation tools. Once I have a version I like, I create a lower poly version, usually from the higher poly version. Then I bring that into Substance, and then I bake the normals, and then I texture it, obviously, in Substance, and then that's it. Then once I do all that, I have the chair. Obviously, I'm cutting a lot out, but you can kind of get the point of what I'm saying in the speed build here. But yeah, once I have the chair, I duplicate that out a bunch, and then I have like all the rows in the chairs, and then I can start modeling the room. The next mesh I focused on was the door. You'll see me throughout some of my projects. I'll bring in other meshes from older projects to work on in here, and for this project, I took a commercial door that I had made. I think it was for a art gallery. I made a commercial door for, and I brought it into this project, and I just kind of adapted it to be what I wanted this door to be. There are some other meshes from other projects I ended up using in here, but from there I ended up just adding more details to the room. So doing like the wall trims, adding the speakers, and doing things around the actual environment. And at this point, I was still deciding how I wanted the world to look and how I wanted to handle textures and what those textures were going to be. A lot of the textures I use are actually seamless textures that I made, and the way I made that was I created a plane, exported that plane out, brought it into Substance, and I used that plane to help me create seamless textures. So that's how I made the ceiling tiles, the walls, basically everything. Every seamless texture that is in this project was basically made that way. And then after that, I atlased together what I wanted to atlas, brought those items into Substance. All those I needed to bake normals on because they had higher poly meshes with them. But once everything was textured, the modeling portion of this theater was essentially done. So this is it. It only took me a couple days to make this environment, and that's because, like I said, there's really not a lot going on here. It's basically just these chairs. And once you put a bunch of lights everywhere, take those other small details, place them around, the world comes together pretty quickly. And because it didn't take me too long to make this, I decided I'm gonna make another one. I approached the second theater the same way that I approached the first one, and that is I started with the chairs. This theater is going to be smaller, and I wanted a completely different vibe than the other one. I decided to create these dual leather cine style chairs, something you'd see in someone's home theater. And modeling this, I approached it, and I basically had separate pieces for every part of this couch, and I used cloth simulation on every mesh in this couch. On the other chair, it was just on certain parts, but on this one, I think it was every piece. And this mesh actually ended up being something like 1 million polys, which is a bit extensive, but it doesn't really matter since it's all just going to get baked onto a lower poly mesh anyways. I actually really like how this turned out. I think it looks so good. I'm definitely going to be using this in multiple projects. This would be great in houses and stuff. I don't know. I really like this mesh. But once that was done, I modeled the room around it just like I did the other one. I added all the details. I modeled this cool little wall speaker for this room. I played with where all the lights were going to go in here. I added a bunch of lights in Blender, but in Unity, I ended up moving all the lights around, so it doesn't really exactly look like this. But this is the final version of this theater, so I really like how this one turned out. I think it looks really good. These chairs look so good. It's much smaller than the other one. It's exactly what I want, so big fan of this space. But now that I have 2 theaters, I figured, and this only took me like a day to model, so I'm on like day 3 here of going ham on this project. I figured I also need a way to connect both these theaters, so I made a little hallway in between both of them. At this point, I have the 2 theaters that I wanted to model. Well, I wanted to model 1, and then I ended up making 2. And so I figured that I would be able to make a hallway to connect them pretty easily. But this actually ended up being the most time-consuming part because I didn't really have an idea for what I wanted. So most of this time was just me playing with textures and me trying to figure out what I wanted. I ended up settling on using like a dark hallway. So there's like 2 different hallways, right? So there's the main hallway that connects the theaters, and then there's the hallways that go from the hallway to the theaters. So the main one, I ended up settling on this bright wood paneling pattern, and then the other hallways I ended up using like this dark trim around the walls and having dark wallpaper around the whole thing. I ended up changing this multiple times, and honestly, I was planning on, by the end of this project, I kind of just wanted to delete this area because I thought it was kind of pointless, and I still don't think it looks good at all. At that point, I had already gone through all the work and set it up in Unity, so I ended up just keeping it in because why not? But yeah, that's the hallway. So the final step here was to bring everything into Unity and set it up in the game engine. The way I did this is I exported everything out separately, brought them in, and created prefabs of all the individual objects. Once I had the prefabs and all the materials made, I made the scenes, and then I moved the props around to their corresponding spots. I did all the lighting right after that. I'm using a real-time reflection probe in here. I had to play with lighting quite a bit to get it right, and you can see that it looks, it more or less, it looks kind of how it looked in Blender. There's some changes, but ultimately I think the theaters look great. Still not a big fan of the hallway, but it is there. Here I am in Unity. I'm going to show you how I have it set up. So you can see this scene is like the full project. And if you look down here, I'm in the scenes folder. I have 4 scenes down here. So one of them is the full project, which is what we're looking at. Then I have one with just the large theater and one with just the small theater. I'm going to show you both of those, but this is how it came out. I had a lot of problems baking in this scene. I'm not really sure why. I think it has something to do with one of the meshes that I was dealing with, which contributed to me wanting to just get rid of this center part completely and just have like the 2 scenes with the theaters. But since at that point I had already gone through all the work to set it up, I thought I would just keep it in here. I'm going to play the scene so you can get an idea of how it would look in game. So you spawn on this side. You're right by one of the doors for the theaters. You can see that it's numbered 1 and 2 because there's only 2 theaters. Both the 1 doors take you to the 1 theater. There's a little mirror here. I added these movie posters because I thought it would look better if there was actual posters in here, but if you download this, it won't come with the posters, and that's because I don't own these pictures. But each door does open. This is how it's set up in the prefab, so you can easily just kind of bring in the doors and move them around if you wanted to. But this is the second theater. You can see I put the lights up there instead of around the back. And if we come this way, this is the large theater. While I'm not a big fan of the hallways connecting it, it is kind of cool to be in a world and just be able to walk around in between the 2. But yeah, let me show you the other scenes. So we're gonna go to the large theater. This is what this project looks like, or this scene looks like by itself, and like I said, it's real-time reflections. I will say that the metallics in this world are a bit overpowering. Well, I didn't think it was too bad, but I'm looking at it now. It's a little bit overpowering. If you didn't like the metallics reflecting so brightly, you can you can like find the file for those textures and change them so that the metallic value isn't so high. But yeah, that's the large theater. Let me show you the small theater. So this is how it turned out. Like I had just said, I had moved the lighting for this to be on the ceiling. In Blender, I had it like wrapping around this trim, but for some reason, the baking in this scene, just it would not look good with the lighting going around the trim here. So the best version of it, I think, is with these area lights pointing up at the ceiling here. And then watching a movie in here with the real-time reflections, it ends up looking really good. And also still a huge fan of these meshes, of these chairs. I think they turned out so good in here. But yeah, that's this project. Below I'll have links to these VRChat worlds if you wanted to check them out. They are private worlds, so you can only visit them through the link. But I think that's all I got for you. Bye.